Well, this person requests how to show texture on a cow's head. Now, that really is going to be a lot of fun. Well, whether it's a cow's head, a dog's head, cat's head, even a person's head, that texture is caused by hair. And what we look for when we're doing that is not hair. In fact, even just calling it texture won't show us very much. But we look for the structure of the thing. Now, there are three things that we can look for initially when we're doing any subject that can give us clues as to how to do it. Now, one of those things is the direction of movement. So I'm going to have to put a little diagram here to work inside of so that it may maybe make a little bit more sense to you. Now, I will not be painting the whole cow's head. We don't have time for that. I'd like to show you one thing that you can do, that you can practice, and you can practice on lots and lots of different subjects rather than trying to do a whole painting for you. So here we go. First of all, we need to give that texture and environment to live in. Of course, that it would be just a little bit of a suggestion of a preliminary as to what that cow's head or what the edges on that cow's head are doing. That's what the preliminary drawing does. And so I'm going to make it large, relatively large here so that you can see the texture when we get to that. So if you can see that we've got on this side is we simply have a line, an edge like that, and we have an edge that sort of comes down, curves a little bit, and then we have the edge of the muzzle, which is about right here perhaps, and kind of curves down like that perhaps, and kind of curves down like that, and then we have that edge there created by the mouth. And then we have edge that comes down like this, this, and this. And then on the other side, what do we have? This is a direction. Which way is it going? That's what we mean when we say directional movement. All shapes have directional movement. All shapes have edges, and those edges have directional movement. So that's, if you think you can't draw, then start looking for shapes instead of thinking about what the thing is. All right, so you can make these are sort of estimations. We can correct them as we go. All right, so as we're moving around, we'll go up like sort of like that, and then maybe a little bit like that, and the top of the head will do something that comes down like this, boom, boom, and then we go out like that, boom, boom, and so that is relatively. Okay, do I need to pull that up a little bit more? Maybe not. All right, then I'm just going to indicate so that we know where our place is. Going to indicate where an eye would go on this side. So on the side of the cow's head, and then there's an eye on this side, on the side of the cow's head. Just sort of indicate that. And we don't have to have ears because I'm not going to be working with ears. So let me just sort of just suggest where those might be. So what we're looking for is what the person asked for. And that is the texture on a cow's head. Now, first of all, that texture is created by value, contrast, not color. Color is a description of it, but the value of it, value, contrast. And then within that value, contrast, the color. So you also notice that the way hair works is that it's layers of hair sit on top of either other layers of hair or on top of the shape itself. So we have layers there, layers that go from this way to further back to further back. Visually, we try to see what is the furthest layer back that we can see. And that when we do a block in then of just that layer. And so what that means here is I'm squinting, and what I'm seeing, you see the shadow area right there? It's darker, this part right here. You see that it's darker? It's about the same value as this is. This is shadow, this is shadow, and this is shadow, and then those little areas of hair coming over that are being hit by light, and that's what's causing us to see that texture. And we see them taking a different direction. So I keep using that word direction because it's very important when you're doing this kind of thing. Direction means which way a stroke would go. So to see that, you look at which direction the texture or the thing itself is going, and you make your stroke go in that direction. That's very simple. So first of all, I want this color right here, this value and that color. Now, I would suggest for any animal, well, anything that where you see that light shadow relationship, which is almost everything, it's easy to start if you have lots and lots of areas that seem to be very, very neutral. In other words, neutral means there's not much hue in it. You can't see much hue in it. It's a good idea to use complementary colors rather than, oh, well, what do you see? And some people would get, oh, I think yellow ochre. I don't see any yellow ochre. And people would say, okay, and there's raw sienna and raw umber. No, you don't need all that. All you need is a set of complements. And so you see, I'm looking at what I'm recognizing as color in here, and I'm seeing something that resembles orange that leans towards red, very light in these colors here. But it's very much like this. When this is desaturated, it begins to go like this, begins to become something like that. So red, orange, desaturated. So I'll start out with a red orange I have in my tube that's slightly desaturated, and that is the Rembrandt Transparent Oxide Red. And then I've chosen already on the palette its complement, and you see the red-orange complement. Back to the color wheel. I always select my colors according to what the color wheel is doing. According to the relation on the color wheel, I found it beats everything else I've ever tried. I've tried all of them. So here we go. So red, orange, blue, green, and in this case it's a blue green that leans a little bit more towards blue. So I have that right here. And what I did there is just simply take some ultramarine blue, mix a little bit of Rembrandt Viridian into it, just a little bit, leaned it more towards that blue I wanted that is direct complement of this particular red orange. So I'm going to, first of all, I want to get this color, right? This value and this color, the darkest that I see. That's what I'm looking for first. The darkest that I see anywhere on that cow's head. And I don't know, head, what does that include? Anyway, so what I'll do is I'll start with my brush. And let's see, I think I'll start with, no, I'm going to start with my flat brush here. Yeah, so I'm going to start with value first. I'm going to get the value first. And so what I'll do is I always like to make myself value lines to start with. If you're used to my work, you know that I do that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to aim at getting a value right here that is very close. So I've got pretty much that value. Then I'm going to reach into my value line for the same value or similar value of the blue. Now just pull that down. I'm going to do my mixing right here. So I'll just pull a little bit of that blue down in here. Now I'm going to pull that blue into that red-orange, like that. And let's get that in the brush really, really good. And now let's see what we got. You see I'm getting very close. I can pretty much tell. I maybe need to put just a little bit more red in this. I've got that red on the palette to get that. Let's see. Yeah, look at that. See there, that's pretty close. So then what I'll do then is I'm going to do what I call block in, and that means that I'm simply blocking in, or I'm placing very generally, not trying to define anything yet, placing very generally what I'm seeing. I'm seeing that just a little bit bluer than I got, so I'm just going to add a little bit more blue back into it. There we go. I bet that's it right there. Yep, that's it. All right, so now here's what I'm doing. Wherever I see any of that, In fact, I may just do it over over the cow's head. All right, I see it behind here and I see it behind here. So I'm going to do that, and I'm just going to place it wherever I see it. I see it coming around just like that, coming down right down over where the eye is, falling into shadow right here. It gets just a little bit lighter. I'll pull some white down, some pure white. Let's pull from this pile right here. Did a little bit of blue in there. It didn't matter. Okay. So I'll put a little bit of white into that and just get this, get what I'm seeing right there underneath all of that. So that's the light shining, and I see that movement. I see the movement of that shape moving in this direction, so I move my brush in that direction. So it's a good idea to practice allowing your brush to move in the same direction that you see a shape moving in. It's always I think it's pretty much a guarantee you're going to get it right, rather than just dab, 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 putting paint on and dab, dab, dab it. That doesn't create any kind of direction. All right, so what have we got here in terms of direction? So I've got this moves down in this direction here, and this one moves in this direction and joins it. You see that? Moves in that direction and joins it, even though I'm working the same value. This is block in. This is just what's underneath everything. So if you get that first, it makes things like this work much better. And so I'm just going to work that right up against the muzzle. And you see, I'm allowing that brush to take on the movement, the visual movement I'm seeing there. And I see a little bit of that too, going across like this. I'm just going across like that. And I see it also on the other side. And that's block in. So I'll just keep adding that and keep mixing. And I like to mix as I go, as you see what I'm doing here, because it gives me the variation in all three of the components of color. So it gives a slight variation in the hue of the color, and the saturation of the color, and also sometimes the value of the color. All right, so what's underneath that eye right there? Oh, I'm coming down this way. Well, that's not quite so much in this part, so I can just do that. And then on the eye part right here, well, that's a little bit lighter. And so I'll just go over and make that a little bit lighter as it connects right there. And then that little light comes down like that. And can you follow that? The little light comes down like that. And then it goes darker again. And it gets a little bit, some places a little bit bluer. So when I say darker, my brush moves in this direction. When I say lighter, my brush moves in that direction. Darker and lighter are the way the light's hitting it, and also the way the shape is positioned against the light. So that if you use the right language, you'll guide yourself to be able to paint anything you see. All right, so here we go. And that one, you see, that's darker. It's darker right there, and it moves down just like that. And then it's even darker, but it's still that neutral. So I'm still not, it's almost gray. You almost don't see any color in there at all. And so what needs to happen right here, that I see that movement going up like that, coming this way and then kind of coming down next to that muzzle right there. And then on top of it, I'm going to go a little bit lighter to get that done. I'm moving now on the top. I'm moving now a little bit more hue in there. I see a little bit more of that color. When I say hue, I mean the color that it is. And so I'm seeing that. So I'm just going to and let the brush move there. It doesn't really show it so much. There we go, like this. Now this, this, that. Now we're beginning to see that difference. All right, now what do we see? I mean, right up here, I think I'm going to do the same thing. Just close that in because all that's going to be overlapping right there. So I'm allowing the brush to take the direction of the way I'm seeing those textures move. The direction I see those in which I see those textures move. Now, just for the psychology of all of us, I'm just going to close this off right over here where the eye is. And I know that everybody's going to say, I need an eye on the cow. And yeah, I do too. But we were doing textures right now, so let's just assume that for a moment. All right. Now, if you get if you get your texture, if you get your block in, or if you create your block in, so that you'll have those degrees of the darker colors you're seeing underneath, then you will be headed in the right direction. So now I'm beginning to kind of refine that block. I'm beginning to go towards what I call refinement now, and that is when I begin to adjust the block in so that it begins to show me what I've got. All right, see now I'm going to begin to show the texture, and so I'll move up. Now you see right here, I'm better wipe the brush off just a little bit. So I'm going right back over here into this lighter mixture that I've made. And you see that's very close to what we're seeing right there. Now what am I going to do with that lighter mixture is I'm going to begin now to build with the brush, allowing it to move. I'm going to layer this lighter on top of the darker. And so that's what we mean when we say light over dark. And light over dark is one of the best ways to structure a painting. You're building it from the canvas towards you. And let's see, what am I seeing? I'm going to build up. I'm gradually, you see what I'm doing there? I'm gradually getting it towards what I'm seeing in the way of color there now. I'm going to gradually build that texture. Don't try to just pick up a little brush. I don't mean it that way, but it will not work if you just pick up a rigger or some little round brush with a point on it and start picking at it. That's what it's going to look like. It's going to look like brush strokes that you. But if you build it according to its structure, and what I mean by that is the texture and the value, what those values are doing, and what's causing those values, you build it that way, and you will find that you'll have a cow with texture. Now, I'm stroking. I'm allowing that brush to stroke the direction I'm seeing those things move. I don't plan, I said before, I don't plan to do the whole cow's head, but I want to do enough to show you, get you going in the right direction. He said, what's going up here? This part right here, we don't see a lot of texture. The texture is happening right up here. So I begin now to stroke and allow some of that neutral to come through right here. And so there's where I begin just to use the tip of the brush. If you're using a flat brush, this will work beautifully. So if you're using the tip of the brush, just use just that tip of that brush and let it just live over. This is a kind of scumble where a light lives over a dark. And so we haven't gotten as light as we see yet. I'm building it gradually. So let's see, I'm going to keep going now. All right, so now see, these move this way. This is overlapping that, so I'll start over what's being overlapped, and I'll just give it little strokes like this and let some of that dark come through. Some of that dark come through, and if I see it moving this way, that's the way I'm going to stroke, and that's how I do it. What I see here guides what happens here with the brush. So I see a stroke, so I'll make a stroke. In fact, it's always a good idea. I find myself often seeing this as a brush stroke, not as fur, not as hair, not as anything, but see it as a brush stroke. If you can learn to see it as a brush stroke, you'll be surprised at the results. So I see that move that way. I see a little bit of something coming back here. All right, now, listen, in the interest of time, I'm not going, as I said before, I just want to show you the process, get it so that you see it working, and then you practice it. You can go, if you don't have any cows in your neighborhood, you can go to pixabay.com and you can Google search there for cows, and they've got all kinds, that's where this came from, all kinds of wonderful photographs of cows. All right, so now I'm going dark to light. I built that little layer in between there, and now I'm going to go for the light. Now, if all this stuff seems to be overlapping, this is being overlapped, and then the overlapping is coming from the bottom to the top. So you build what's being overlapped first, and then you overlap your overlap. That's what creates the texture. And you just pay attention to the direction in which those are moving. So what I'm going to aim for next, I'm going to make a quick jump, and I'm going to aim now for this final, well, relatively final, what we're seeing there is texture, which is lighter, and it does vary in value some places. So what I'm doing here, I'm going to find that value. I'm just going up towards the light on my value scale, on my palette, my value line, and you see that? Okay. And I'm seeing some variation in value there. So I'm gonna pull this out of the brush here so I can have control. And see how flat the brush is. See how you don't see any paint loaded on the brush. I'm going to load the brush by holding it relatively flat and pull. Just pull on top of a layer of paint. You see there? This is what I'm doing. And I check it there and I see I'm in the right ball. And I'll load both sides of that flat brush. Okay. Yeah. All right. Now the brush is going to move in the direction that I see the thing moving. Now I'll have to continue to go and reload because every time I stroke it, a little paint comes off. So I'm beginning to build it now. So, all right, this is being overlapped, so I'm going to build that. And that is what creates the texture. So let that fall this way. I'm just using the corner of the brush, just the corner of the brush. And I might add here that if you can learn to do this sort of thing where you let the corner of the flat brush build your thin lines or your thin textures, your hair textures or whatever, grass textures, all like that. The edge, the tip on the edge of the corner of a flat brush has so much capacity, and it can give you give you the ability to make things look more natural than if you try to use those little pointed brushes. You can see what I'm doing right here, and I'll start there, and now I'm going to reload again, get a little bit more of that light in there, and watch the direction it's coming this way, and the stroke's longer. And so do it again, and you see the stroke's longer. This one overlaps that stroke. I think I'm seeing a little red come through there. That's another thing that's really fun. I'm going to go right up here into the light of this is a red violet that I had from another demonstration. So I could use that because I do see it getting a little bit redder as it goes. It gets a little bit lighter in some of those areas. Let's see what that does. All right, so them. All right, so I'm going to give it some more strokes there. I'm going back over here and kind of get a variation in value. I'm seeing that value get a little bit darker. Remember, I'm leaving space between these for that dark to come through. And over the eye, here, you see it's coming this way. This structure's coming that way and that way. And then right up the edge of the head, you don't see much texture there, but the movement's coming this direction. And so you can see where that's going. All right, so now he's got that little part. I almost lost the dark for that part. I'm going to put that back in because that's important. So I'm going to go right back up in here. And that's the other beauty about the value line that I use. Of course, other artists can do this on their method for using the palette too. But where you can always go back and get the same color every time with this method. It's never a guessing game. Now I'm wanting a little bit of red in there. Okay, just get that a little bit redder. Let's see. All right, now I'm going to put this back up in here. In fact, I think I'll stroke it back in. Let's get just a little bit more paint on there. Stroke that back in to get that little area back up there. See there? Like that. And then let's get that part and put that corner there. And, oh, it's moving up. It's moving up. So it's moving up from kind of a little fan shape like that. And wait a minute. Didn't see much of that, so I didn't have enough paint in the brush. Get just a little bit more paint. Get my mixture. A little bit bluer. A little bit bluer and a little bit darker. There we go. And get that set up there so I can vary that value. I'll put some of that red in it. Vary that value a little bit more. Let's see what we've got there. Okay. Okay, now let's see what happens. Yeah. All right, so we just give that, start at the center, and just bring that little corner of the brush over there and create that little part thing. And then up here, let's go a stroke up. It's a little bit darker right in there then. Okay, so we can start that. So that pattern goes something like this. Okay, and that's not a bad way if you're working from photographs. Not a bad way to gauge what stroke you're going to use. Just go here with your brush and let your brush mimic that direction. So what you're seeing up here, you're seeing this sort of thing first, as the dark like that, boom, boom, boom. And we're seeing a little bit more of this right in here. Now I'm going to rinse the brush and go for that very, very light, brighter light on all of those. So it's building it gradually, and even though I haven't worked in these areas, I think you can begin to see how that happens. So let's do a little bit more of this right down in here, and then I'm going to go up to those lighter areas. I'm going to get that just a little bit more blended right there. And then I'll go up in those lighter areas right up in here where it's very, very, where the color, we see more color. Right up here, let's get enough paint on that brush, and let's just let it kind of, yeah, do that. A little more paint. I need more paint on the brush. All right, let's see. Right there. Okay. What do we have here? There we go. Like that. Let's go here. Let's put some more. I may have to mix myself that more of that particular value. Okay, this goes this way, this way, this way, this way, this way, this way, and this way, this way, this way, this way, this way, and there. Let's get some curly stuff going. The tip of the brush there, tip of the brush here. Load the brush again, and this part right here, tip of the brush. Now let's get that longer part. See if I got enough color for that. All right, starting at the top, give it a, I just let the brush, I push my hand down, let the brush sort of relax in my hand and just give it a flip. And don't try to, if you go too slow, it looks stiff. You can't do that. So let's give it a little bit of tween like that. And then a little bit more over here and like that. A little bit more down here and here, like that, and there. Let's get those a little bit more blended. So I'm just going to let the brush kind of play in there and get those a little bit more blended. And can you begin to see now how we can do that? Let's get that a little bit more blended out. Now, let's put one little touch. Okay, imagine an eye there, imagine an eye there. We're not doing eyes, we're just showing textures. So let's get over here now and just give it a little bit of light. Pull that light up just a little bit. Where? Right here and here. A little bit over like that. A little bit more right here. And maybe a little bit more up here. Let it fall down a little bit more like that. And I lost my dark up there again, but let's see if we put that in. And then I may just let that be, see if I've shown you enough so that you get the hang of how you can do that. There we go. That. All right. All right. Boom, 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 boom. There. And then boom, there. And boom. I keep seeing more. And I really can't take very much more time here. All right, so perhaps I've shown you enough there that you can see if you continue in that direction, continue just following the direction of the movement that you see in the cow itself, on the surface itself. And by following that directional movement, dark to light, then you can build that texture. And if you can imagine all the other things put in, the eyes put in, the ears and all like that, it really then begin to make sense. So give that a try and see what you think about this method for creating texture. Be sure and view all of our quick tips. And while you're doing so, subscribe to the channel, click on the bell so you'll always get a notice when we produce a new quick tip, which is every week. And if you have a question, leave it in the comments section and we'll make a quick tip for you. Also, take a trip over to DianeMize.com where I have full-length lessons, downloads, DVDs, lots of other stuff there, some free stuff for you. And while you're there, you can subscribe to the newsletter, and that way you'll always be informed every time we do something new.